Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, to a new episode of Author Talks. This is your, for the moment, sole anything on this channel, Thomas Wrightson, an author who talks. This episode is going to be relatively short and more to do with tiny updates and a bit of entertainment for you. The main thing that I'm doing, which will be definitely taking up quite a bit of my time, is I am onto the galley proofs stage of my upcoming science fiction project, and even have a title that I hope I'm not being indiscreet in revealing it. The final title that seems to be happening for my upcoming book is the Starborn Vendetta, and for anyone who needs a reminder, it is the actually, have I ever talked about it in any detail? Anyway, it is the first part of a science fiction pentalogy, currently called the Cluster Cycle. That may change, and, well, I will talk more about it when there's big official press release stuff going on from its publisher, Roan Weatherford. I can tell you that it's being released through their imprint, Dragonbray, or presumably, because that's the one that deals with their science fiction and fantasy, and this is science fiction, obviously. Anyway, the main thing is that I am probably going to be busy, quite apart from the fact that I have been finally getting a handle, real proper grip on the fantasy project that I'm doing next, as a kind of, not a follow-up to the Cluster Cycle, obviously, because different genres, but as my next big project, my next big thing. So for the rest of this episode, I am going to give you a short story, one of mine. It's a small thing, nothing too major, or it's a silly thing that I wrote quite a while ago, and I hope you will enjoy. And if you hear weird noises and oddness and hear me being a bit blah blah blah, it's because it's extremely hot. Outside, it is getting on for 30 degrees. That's hot. And so, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between, I give you a short story of my own creation. Here's hoping it won't be too boring. Train Jumper. So, monsieur, can you tell me what you are doing on this train without a ticket? René looked up at the inspector. His wrists chafed from the cuffs slapped on him without much warning by two of the odd people he'd seen scattered through the three middle carriages of the Continental Express. He'd gone to the luggage car to find some peace, and had instead found two more of them cloistered there and ready to detain him with undue roughness. René looked up and gave his most charming smile. I admit I'm not exactly following the rules, but I've been looking for the conductor for the last half hour since I got on at Debaboy, and all I've seen is someone in a conductor's uniform. The inspector twitched his upper lip. You have sharp eyes. Yes, so could you please let me go? I've left my book in the compartment. Yes, the inspector smiled. Yes, you would like to be set free, but you are unknown to us. You are entirely new to this train, and we have no desire to be made fools of. What are you talking about? They had been talking in a quiet, amicable way, but under it René was growing nervous, and he saw the inspector was a little over-satisfied at this situation. The inspector replied after a too long pause. You are no doubt aware of the recent spate of robberies in the capital. These robberies are the work of a group known as Le Triplet Masque. We received word that they were going to be on this train, and thus we set a trap for them. René had never heard of the name Le Triplet Masque, but they sounded entertaining, exciting and exotic, like someone saying "the Phantom" to someone in a club on the islands. The inspector continued talking, sounding off some complicated round of robberies and the measures taken to try and lure them into this place. But why the hell was he here? The inspector closed off. And as it happens, one of Le Triplet Masque has an interesting feature. A small birthmark like an oblong mole just above the wrist. Oh, good lord. That's why they'd grabbed and held him. That bloody scar from a few years ago. Well, wouldn't do to say anything about it. The inspector leaned in close. So, my good fellow, I would like you to think very carefully. I wish to... What is it? The compartment door was torn open and a half-apoplectic policeman appeared. The inspector glared over, and the man seemed frozen into dumbness. But finally he found words. Inspector, the emerald... The inspector's face blanched. What happened? It's gone! Window! The window! What about the window? The thief used the carriage window! As if on cue, there was a loud pattering noise from above. René looked up. It sounded like someone was walking along the roof of the carriages. The inspector shouted, "Quick! The roof!" The train was speeding through the night, echoing along the rails. Standing on its slightly sloping roof, La Fantôme admired her latest coup, an emerald that only just fit into the palm of her gloved hand. What fools the police had been, trying to deceive her with a bogus one in the next carriage down. They would probably think she had an accomplice, but all she'd done was listen. Listen and waited. Then, when some kind of commotion occurred, she had slipped along the outside of the train and done the switch through the window right under their noses. Another thing they hadn't reckoned on. Someone using the window rather than trying to get in through the doors or the roof. Passengers had ears too, and the one thing the police didn't seem to be expecting was that the thief would be travelling on the train as a legal passenger. They had always expected thieves to do something dishonest when executing their plan. In truth, it was much easier for a thief to do something honest by way of acquiring transport. It muddled them up with the common stereotypical view in a policeman's mind that all criminals were shifty, uncultured, and without scruples. Not she. She wouldn't see the train service short-changed due to her business here. She turned upon hearing the scuffling sounds, and spun on the spot to see Inspector Dupreddieu clambering up on the roof through a maintenance hatch. She checked her watch again, then smiled and looked at him through the eye-holes of her mask. She had to shout a little to be heard over the train's rattle and the rushing wind. "Why, Inspector Dupreddieu! This is a truly horrible surprise!" Dupreddieu raised his badge in one hand, while in the other he showed what appeared to be a gun. "So, La Fantôme! I'm placing you under arrest." La Fantôme cocked her head. "Really? Here? Isn't this a rather awkward place to arrest someone?" She turned. "I do believe there's another train coming. Right on time. Stay right where you are." La Fantôme smiled, waiting. The train was cruising up on another line that for the moment was hidden by trees, but after a minute or two, during which time the inspector tried to approach but couldn't keep his balance with the wind and rocking, the trees disappeared and the two lines all but came together. The train crawled up, going actually at a slightly faster speed. Once the first carriage had appeared, before the inspector could say anything, La Fantôme skipped onto the carriage roof of the other train. She smiled and called out, "So sorry to disappoint you, Inspector Dupreddieu, but I'm afraid this round goes to me." Dupreddieu aimed his weapon. "You haven't escaped." "Really? Think, Inspector. Where are we?" The inspector frowned in annoyance, then his face fell comically. La Fantôme nodded. "Yes, this is the border with a country which is very understanding. If you shoot me, it'll probably cause one heck of a scandal. Police trespassing on foreign soil and all that. So I think we can both agree to let bygones be bygones for the moment. And you can tell the dear Countess from whom you borrowed this emerald to get another jeweller." She tossed the emerald into the air, then placed it under her heel and pressed down. The glass bauble that had looked so real crumbled under her feet, and the inspector was left speechless until the train pulled away. La Fantôme stretched, yawned, and settled onto the roof. In a few minutes the train would slow down, and she could jump safely off and find her way to the rendezvous under her real identity. Yes, it would be a good party. René had provided an excellent distraction. There were excellent advantages to having a brother with an impeccable reputation in the diplomatic corps who didn't know anything about her other activities. She sighed, looking up at the night sky. "Ah, c'est la vie. Feu de Bhairavi, petit frère." And that, everyone, is that short story. I apologise profusely for my butchered French. I cannot imagine what I was thinking when I used French in those stories. So, I am so pleased I was actually able to do my podcast for this week. Cut it rather close to the line, I'm afraid, and I hope the temperature drops in another couple of weeks, because I really have had to be a bit of a whatever it is to do this while having the fan off so that it wasn't going woo 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 in the background. But ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, see ya! This episode, blip, blip. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you a new short story, or rather, a short story. I really need to do that bit again. I admit I'm not exactly following the rules, but I've been looking for the conductor for the last half hour since I got on at oh bother! And all I've seen is, oh, not again. And as it happens, one of Les Triplet Masques has an interesting feature, and I have to do that again. It muddled, blah, blah, blah. She turned upon hearing the scuffling sounds and spun on the spot to see Inspector Depredieu. Why did I choose French names? Oh no! Le Fantôme stretched her arms. I'm slowly melting in my chair. Just so you know, I have only just found out in my sound processing software that you can merge audio clips. Very useful. And yes, the fan is blowing in this clip. I do not apologise, it is bloody hot.